I still just feel like, well, what's next?
Yeah.
And I'm like, when do I give myself grace? Like, when do I pat myself on the back kind of thing?
That's how you can really think of what I was thinking in that time. It was quite literally survival. I'm like, yeah, this.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of P.O.P, where we value progression over perfection. Sorry, it's been a little minute. We've been busy, you know how it goes. But we have a special guest, my friend Melissa, being the first woman on the P.O.P. So we appreciate you. And you know how we do. We don't have no notes. We don't have no phones. We're just gonna have good conversation. We got our drinks, and we about to just vibe out. So it's a beautiful day, and I'm just gonna go ahead and spin it over to Melissa. You can go ahead and introduce yourself, and just we'll go from there.
Okay. Honored to be the first woman guest, first of all. So I think we, we'll have some very interesting topics today. Definitely like what you've been doing so far. Just wanted to make that known. So I'm Melissa, as noted. Currently in Charlotte, North Carolina. Been here since I graduated college, so almost 10 years.
Wow.
Actually, 10 years now, yeah. So from South Carolina originally. Oh, I did want to make this noted. Let me look at my camera. I saw one of your podcasts. You had one of your friends on, and they're from Beaufort.
Yeah.
And they said, it's the lowest of lowest counties in South Carolina. Which is incorrect. True? I'm from Jasper County, which is the lowest county.
Okay.
It actually touches the Georgia state border. So you can insert a map here for reference.
So everybody, geography, y'all know.
Yeah. So I was born in North Carolina. My dad's from North Carolina. My mom's originally from South Carolina. My parents got divorced when I was like 4 or 5, so we moved to South Carolina, Jasper County. And I graduated high school there. It was an interesting time.
Okay.
Obviously, South Carolina is one of the poorest states, education-wise, and Jasper County is one of the poorest counties in the poor states.
Okay.
So you can only imagine, I guess, how that experience was.
Okay.
Definitely character building is what I like to call it. Went to Winthrop for undergrad. Also a very different experience. So Jasper County, I'm sure a lot of people don't really know what it is.
Yeah, I've never.
Extremely small. Yeah, very small. So I think what I'll say is going to Winthrop was a culture shock for me. I had never been around that many white people ever in my life.
Oh, okay.
So,
is it a lot? Is it like a larger percentage?
Yes.
Okay.
So when I went, I think it was around like a 80-20, maybe 70-30. Now, even when I was there through the 4 years, they did start to diversify a lot more. So now I know it's a lot better. But when we went, coming into that was just insane for me. I always wanted to go to Howard.
Okay.
I always wanted to go to Howard. My mom, like hindsight, I understand, right? But in the moment, I despised her for it. It was just a hard no, right? My mom was very, very critical on us, like a super strict parent. I got a lot of scholarships going into college, but most of them were restricted to me going to a college in South Carolina, which is why I understand now.
Okay.
It's like, okay, understand that. But seeing as though I graduated with student loans anyway, I'm like,
Exactly. It kind of all feel the same way.
Right. It's like I probably, if I could do it again, I definitely probably would have done a different school.
Why Howard, if you don't mind me asking? Like, what attracted you to Howard?
I have always been, I grew up in the country, like super country, but my mom was raised most of her life in Michigan, and she kind of raised us the same way. So I always stuck out like a sore thumb. I always tell people, like, probably 70% of things I know growing up did not come from school. It came from my mom. Okay. She taught me everything, and she raised us in a very specific way. So I never really felt like I belonged in like a small. I wanted to be in DC. I wanted to be around like black people. I wanted to be around like different culture, and like she's also very into the arts, and I was like, I love it. Like that's what I want, and I also just wanted to be as far away as I could be. Honestly. which is another reason why I picked Winthrop. Like out of the schools, I'm gonna pick the one that's the farthest away.
Yeah, because I seem like I get like Winthrop is the same kind of vibe as like College of Charleston. Is that like kind of the same?
Yeah.
Okay.
Super small, very artsy.
Right.
Again, like super white, and essentially, I would think that I went to a super small high school. I think my graduating class was like 140. And so I think going to a small college as well just was not what I needed,
right.
Exposure-wise. But it was an experience,
Yeah, no, I can see that for sure. Coming from Jasper and then going to Winthrop. Now, how was it like? Did you already kind of know that? What kind of major? Like, what did you major in at Winthrop? Like, what was the experiences
it's
like?
Very funny. So, in my 4 years of college, I had 5 majors.
Wow. Okay. All right.
So yeah, my mom, again, it all kind of goes back to the way you were raised.
Mm-hmm.
I was tailored in a very specific way when I was raised to be kind of like the best I could be, but really that isn't not in what I wanted to be. What would make the most sense, I guess, when it comes to like success.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went to school, my major was biology. I wanted to be a pediatric nurse. Like that's always what like I love kids. I was a teacher cadet throughout all of high school. I was like, yeah, this is it. As soon as I started in August, changed my major. So that didn't even last like a week in school. So I started as psychology, changed it to biology.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm sorry. I started as biology and changed it to psychology.
Okay.
That lasted a semester. And I actually don't know why I changed it.
Yeah, I was about to ask. You got another ology, so it's like, okay, I'm trying to stay in the
psychology
science
was one of those things where I loved figuring things out, right? And like psychology is the study of the mind, obviously, and people, and it just was intriguing to me. Biology was, the thing I don't really talk about a lot is that when I got to college, because of the way that I grew up, I went into complete shock. Like I had never had that much freedom ever in my life.
Yeah, you say you was
very strict.
Yeah.
And it took a turn for the worse. So, got to college and like I had free will, right? So you go to class if you want. Like nobody's checking for you. You do the work if you want. I never had to study hard in high school. Everything was just, obviously the curriculum was like bottom tier, so it was just extremely easy. And college that's not how that works, Like, you gotta earn it.
Yeah, you do.
And I think at that age, right, like you're 17, 18 going into college, you don't have any experience on really doing anything on your own, and then you're just thrown into this pit of like, figure it out.
Exactly.
So my first semester of college, I can't remember what my GPA was, but it was like...
It was just low.
It was so low that I had to sit a semester out. Like I was forced to sit a semester out.
Hold on now. I mean, I feel you. I done told them I done failed 2 classes, so I don't knock nobody because it's a shocker when you.
It really is. It really is, and I know people talk about it in like the concept of like student loans and taking out that amount of money at that age, but also like the amount of responsibility that you're throwing at that age. It's so different. And like I said, I didn't want to be at that school. I was very shocked by, like, I was culturally shocked, right? So it was just everything that I was experiencing, I don't think I could deal with it. I was just very used to, operating on 10 my entire life. Like, every club you could think of, SGA president, senior class president, captain of the cheerleading team.
Dang.
I played the clarinet in band up until high school. Like, I was always just busy and fulfilled, right? And now I could just do what I want. I never knew what that even was.
You didn't have that freedom before.
Never. I'm like, well, it's like people ask you, like, what do you like to do? And you're like, well, I know what I do on my free time, but when you ask me, like, what I enjoy doing, what I like to do, I don't even know,
It's kind of like you got to sit back and think because you've been busy so long with all this stuff. It's kind of like, I just do it because I do it. Do I like it?
Who knows, you know? And it's like, that was very different for me. So I think that was probably like the biggest shift in my life, to where I was, because I had never felt anything in my life, like not even as much as of a C, because it was an option. And I like, my GPA was so low, they were like, maybe you need to
you need to chill out.
do you even want, And I didn't even have the option to move back home. So like I ended up moving with my sister for a semester, like the semester I was forced to sit out. And so after that, I'm coming back. It gave me time to think, like, what do you want to do?
Right.
Like, be intentional
Truly,
with this.
yeah,
like,
yeah.
you know, like, you don't get any more chances after this. Like, it's now or never. Like, you know, going back home is not an option.
Exactly.
You know?
Fight or flight.
It's,
Really.
yeah, literally, right? So, came back to school, and I think this is when I went into integrated marketing communications. Not really sure what drove me here. But that was it was interesting for me. But once I came back, again, I was so focused. I was like,
do you think like all that stuff that happened, you know, with the failing and all that stuff and just all this free time, you just kind of fall on your face, do you feel like that kind of what gave you that fire up on
Absolutely.
you? Like, so do you think if you didn't have that, you think everything would just be different right now?
Absolutely. I am probably the biggest proponent of everything happens for a reason. Yeah. When it comes to like my entire life, really. I think, like, I try to think back, like, if I chose a different college, I probably wouldn't have failed out. But, you know, like, the way that the cards fell was exactly how they were supposed to. I ended up graduating with a communications degree. Well, really, I had a double degree by then. So I still graduated in 4 years, right? So like,
you doing it.
When I say fire, and like I mean that, right? Like
you was in there putting work.
Yeah, because it's funny. Like I have friends, you know, that we came in together and they didn't take semesters off, and you know, like
y'all finished around the same time.
Yeah, or after me, really. You know, and it's like, and I understand that depending on major or whatever, college can take 5-6 years, whatever it is. People have different things going on, but that's how you can really think of what I was thinking in that time. It was quite literally survival. I'm like, I'm getting this done and I'm out. And I never really did anything with my communications degree, honestly. So I ended up double majoring kind of in communications and feminist theory. Fell in love with that in my junior year. And I had enough credits by then where they were like, you can just major in this. And then that's my senior year is when I realized I took a political theory class where I had to write a thesis, and I did it on the dichotomy of like black women and abortion and low income. And I was like, I want to go to law school.
Yeah, it sounds about all in the same.
Yeah. So I was in that class. I was the youngest person in there, and I was in there with some of the smartest people I had ever in my life been in a room with. And it just really, another thing, like it put a fire in me, and I'm like, this is what I like. I love the education space. You know, I'm like, I want to do this again.
Right.
Like, it's crazy because you would think how I struggled my first semester in college, I would want to be done with it and never see it again. And I ended up graduating and like really craving that more.
Yeah, yearning for more at that point,
And I think that's why it's important to really focus on things you enjoy, right? Like, otherwise it just feels forced. And and like, if you really go in and that's also why I love how some people have, really it's a privilege to kind of take that year after high school where they just sit and experience things or just really think about what it is that they want to do.
Truly figure out what you want to do.
Yeah, it's very important.
I feel like it's like anything. Like if you're not 100% passionate about it, or you don't really feel that fire for it, you only gonna you ain't putting 100% probably. You're only gonna put 90, and you still got more if you truly had really liked it for real.
Yeah, so. And I hate, like, that's also my thing career-wise too. Now, currently, I'm in a space where I genuinely enjoy what I do. But I know so many people who their job is genuinely just a way to, means to make money, which is not a bad thing. But I wish that we were in a place, the way our economy is set up, to where people could genuinely enjoy what they do and make money from it to survive.
Tough, because people love genuinely like doing something. Like I'm like not the teachers. Because I think y'all deserve to get paid way more than y'all do. And people enjoy teaching, but I hear so many stories of just people just saying, I can't do what I love because it can't support my life or even just the basic necessities of life now.
Now that you say that, I was an education major third. That's what the third one I was looking for. I was like, what? I'm missing one. So after psychology, it was education. And literally my mom was like, so my mom was a teacher. And I'm like, realistically, I like nice things. Like, I'm never going to be able to really sustain the life that I want on a teacher's salary.
Yeah,
but like,
that shouldn't be the case.
It really is. And I think we really gloss over how teachers are genuinely like the core of our.
They're the foundation.
Truly,
you don't have a lawyer without a teacher.
You don't.
The preschool teacher is the foundation. Then it just elementary, then high school, college. If these people don't want to work, then you don't have the future.
And I think that's why, like, the state that our children and like teens and even young adults are in now is an exact result of that, right? Like, I can honestly right now recall every single teacher or leadership staff I've had in school that had made an insane impact on me and why I am where I am. It's unmatched, right? Like, parents, when they say it takes a community, that's real. It's so real, right? Like, your parents, yes, huge part of who you are, but also the other people in your life, the other adults in your life that really help shape you and like see you in a different way than your parents do is.
I mean, you got to look at it like this. Like, the parent, especially when it's like if you're above like a child, you have to go to school, and that teacher or whoever you're at for that 8 hours while your parents are at work, if they do work, probably sees you more throughout the week than your parent does during the week, at least.
Yeah.
So that they have a large impact on that child's life. So.
Yeah. And I think they see things in you too that your parents might not, right?
Exactly,
like, I can think of all the opportunities that like some teachers would suggest to my mom that, like, you know, well, Melissa's really good at this, or I think, you know, I kind of see this in her, and I wasn't as open with my mom because of that parent-child, you know, like structure that you have with them. You're just not as comfortable. And I think that's another thing too, where if I could give anyone advice career-wise, it would 1000% be to get a mentor. I think that has been, like, I owe my entire career to my mentors. Currently, I have like a personal one and a professional one. And I'm also a mentor too, because I can't overstate the importance of it, specifically as a Black person, right?
I can see that.
Like, in professional fields, no matter how diverse, you know, things may look or feel, there's always going to be a huge difference in experience. Very true. Having someone to advocate for you is something that I think as Black people, specifically Black people from underprivileged areas, it's something that we don't really account for.
Yeah, we don't think about it like that.
You don't. You're taught, work hard, be smart, be good at this, and then you do all that, and you realize, you know, there is like a limit for me.
Glass ceiling,
Yeah, and I think having people to really, another thing I'll say for mentorship is, I think beginning of it, I was thinking, I just want to find a Black woman who's gotten to the place that I want to be, and so she can just drop me all the
give
gems.
You the keys. Yeah. Here's what I would have done, or here's what I think your next steps, your roadmap, basically, to get where I am, or you to get further than I am.
And that's where I was wrong.
I was about to, like, now that you mentioned, like, the mentors and all that, like, my boss was telling me that, you know, I should really get a mentor. And, like, I have somewhat of a mentor, but we're not, like, official. Like, I just kind of see what they do.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like, okay, like, I'm assuming, like, I'm not really even asking them. I'm like, okay, I see their steps on how they got where they are. For those that don't know, like, give your experience of, like, how you found your mentor professionally and personally, and then the differences between, like, the professional and the personal mentors.
Absolutely. So, originally, my first mentor...
the professional or
professionally is how I started. I just recently actually got a personal mentor. I've worked for a huge company for years, right? So there are like ERGs, like groups that you can join that kind of target these things, right? So immediately I'm like, okay, I want to join the women's group. I want to join the Black and African American group because I want to be around like-minded people like me. I want their experiences. I want, you know, to network with them. I want to meet people, especially because I joined at such a young age. So I started working at the company when I was 24.
Okay.
And that's a very impressionable age, right? I For me, I've always been a very far-sighted person. So I'm thinking, what's next? What can I do, to further this? So that's how I started. And in one of those groups, Black and African American one, they had a mentorship program. First couple years, I was like, I'm very weird about feeling like I've always been a very independent person, and I think I didn't I kind of took mentorship as somebody kind of telling you what,
this is what you need to be doing.
And it's like, well, you don't know me. Like, you don't have this, like, and just because you've gotten here doesn't mean that that's what's going to work for me.
Same path for me,
it was a very ignorant way to view things, but
it's valid, though.
It's real. It really is real. And I was like, in my head, I'm like, I got here on my own. I can figure it out the rest of the way. And so I think a year or two in, when I really started experiencing the culture of corporate America and how I was viewed, not only as a woman, not only as a Black person, also as a young person in that space.
Yeah, that's very true.
I realized I need some guidance here. So I signed up for mentorship through my job, and obviously it was a Black and African American thing. So I got a Black mentor, and she was also a woman. And also working for the company I worked for, another privilege that I do not ever take for granted is that I happen to work with a very diverse group.
Nice.
So I had already had 2 women managers and 1 Black woman director. And not only do I owe my, career to my mentor, I also owe my career to the women in those spaces who saw me.
Yeah, your leadership.
Yes. It's so different to experience it, and I don't think a lot of people do, specifically in corporate America. Women in those spaces, and not just for a diversity number, right? But like women who belong there, who earn that, who know and see you in a very different way than men do. So not only did I have that mentor, but I also had unofficial mentors for, just being able to work for women who, again, saw me and just saw my potential better than I could ever see it. So that was my, and ever since I got my first mentor and she really poured into me and saw me in ways that I didn't, I think that's the biggest thing. I thought I knew what I wanted, where I could go, what I was good at, but it's very different than people who've been there, who have been in places that you can't even imagine, and seeing things in you and telling you, these are things that you can work on. These are the things that, you really need. And
coming from a good place, too. Like, they're not even trying to, like, tear you down. They're like, okay, I see this. This is what I feel like. And it's a conversation. Y'all had that.
That support. And I can be very honest and say, like, that's something that I never had. Everything I've done up to that point was just me survival, right? Like, this is what I have to do. Like, and, like, actually hearing, this is what you're good at. This is what you need to work on. It's very different.
It is.
Mentorship is, it's truly a gem. It's truly a gem. And it's things that I would say, like, our white counterparts have had since high school and even beyond,
They get kind of combed.
Absolutely.
As, throughout high school, they say, like, okay, we're starting to comb you so you can run this business. Or so you can do this, so you can do that. And it's like, we don't have that because we're just learned, like, you work for a company 40 years, you retire, and you try to have a good life. And you're just like, it's got to be more than that.
It's that false thing to where, like, you work hard and you're rewarded, and you get it, and you get there and you realize that's not how it works.
Especially when you hear, like it's hard to, like, when you have your ear to the streets and you kind of like, okay, I'm in this space, I work here, I do this. And then you kind of hear, like, okay, I'm getting my progressionary raises or whatever, like, I'm feeling good. But then you're like, okay, this person over here is making X, Y, and Z. You're like,
yes.
Hold on now, like, I feel like I'm working hard. Why am I not getting?
That might have been the biggest slap in the face that I've ever experienced in my life, to where I had my first, it was technically my second big girl job, but at, like, the big company, and this white man just literally casually talked about his salary, and it was like, I don't think I've ever felt my heart drop to the floor that way.
Yeah, because you're like, what the heck? Especially when they ain't working, like you're not, like, the kind of work they produce. You're just like, I'm over here busting my tail
literally
to do this.
They're not as smart as you.
Yeah.
They don't work as hard as you. It's just they know more than you. Like, when it comes to that, corporate culture.
Game,
And that's really what it is. Like, get the degrees, get the work experience, do, everything you can on your own, but absolutely have someone who can really guide you and lead you and give you those gems. Like, the only, like, if I could like scream that from the sky specifically to like young Black people, I absolutely would. And you know, mentorship in general is just important.
What's the personal, like, what's the personal one do?
So my personal,
I'm curious.
So I left a company that I worked for, and I had a mentor there, and she actually ended up leaving as well.
Okay.
And obviously, you know, since our mentorship was started through the company, it kind of ended officially, but we kept in contact. She put me onto a lot of the community groups that she was in, and a lot of like the professional groups that she did, and the things that really, you know, like made a change for her. And so we would see each other on certain events and things like that, and networking. And I asked her, I'm like, you know, I genuinely, I feel like you changed my life in ways that I could never ever had even like fathomed. You know, like asking, like, would you be interested in kind of like continuing the mentorship? And she was all for it, like, you know. And I think that's also very important. People who are just willing, because you won't meet. I'm not gonna say every Black person you meet in the office is your, you know, you really gotta have discernment to where you're like, are you one of those or you one of those, like type thing, because it can really go either way. And I think we need more people who want to pour back into us, you know, in those settings. And that's why I became a mentor too, because I'm like, you know, where I'm at, I still feel relatively young, and I don't want to say inexperienced, but still, you know, I just think about how much of my career I have in front of me. But I also think about all of the things and hard lessons that I learned too late that didn't have to be, where I'm like, okay, let me get someone, let me be able to give someone that where I should have had it, you know? So I just, mentorship is, it's very important. Personally, my personal mentor actually even introduced me to my first therapist.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah. It's so crazy the relationship that you can build with people. And I think it went from personal to professional fairly quickly, just because of the relatability, you know?
Very true.
And she told me, like, you know, a lot of the things that are holding you back professionally really have to do with your personal life. And she introduced me to a therapist, and even that, like, completely shifted my life. So could never, ever, you know, thank her enough.
That's what's up. Y'all, so if y'all don't have a mentor, make sure you grab one or look at it, because it's a lot of things that we don't know that others can drop dimes for us. And it's just, you know, things that we might already know, but we just don't know how to get there, or just the steps to, you know, figure out. So it's just like, it's someone who's in a space that you're already trying to get into, they're going to know the best. If you see someone's a millionaire, you want to get where they're at, they'd be like, hey, can I get 5 minutes of your time? Can I just sit down and just pick your brain? I do that at work all the time. And I never even thought of it like that. But when you have someone officially that's kind of like, y'all set up that time, sit down, and then they kind of just, you know, have that roadmap for you, it can definitely open up a lot of doors.
That's also important too, though, what you said about just asking that, you know, can I pick your brain really quick? Is that I think some people get to a certain point where they think, you know, I'm good in my career, or I'm good where I am in this space. But when I say, like, you can never, ever stop learning things, there's always someone who's been where you are, or who's farther than where you are, or is where you want to go, right? And you can always learn something. Like, that's my biggest thing, is that I always just want to know more.
Yeah, very true.
You know, you can never know too much. Like, whether it's a different area or something that's affecting, you know, what you do currently. And I've also realized that people are flattered by that. Like, when you kind of walk up or approach someone and say, you know, I'm very interested, I think you're really good at what you do, whatever, like, can I have 5 minutes of your time?
5 minutes is all it takes, and then we can just expand from there. If they like what they're hearing, or you like what you're hearing, you can have that reoccurring or whatever.
Yeah, and think about the things that you know too, and like how the knowledge that you have could be beneficial to someone else that you know, never know. That's why I think also being a mentor, people may think like, oh, I'm not, you know, I don't think I'm in a position to, but sometimes I think, you know, we don't give ourselves enough credit.
I'm guilty of that, 'cause I feel like I still need to do so much more, but then I have people that just be like, yo, Chan, what you got going on, bro? Like, how did you do this? How did you do that? And I'm kind of like, you asking me? Like, you asking me? I'm like, okay, all right, let me drop you some, you know, I'm gonna let you know what I know, because I'm the type of person, I'm not gonna try to gatekeep. For what? I want to see everybody win.
Exactly.
Like, I'm not even like that. So.
That's the biggest thing. Like, yeah, it really is. And I think because we are, like you said earlier, like we're our biggest critic. So we are always thinking of what's next and what we want to do next. And like, we're never thinking of ourselves as accomplished individuals that we are.
Me and my brother were just talking about that because we're now if you're like this too, I want to get your opinion. But me and my brother, we're like always like, we got this thing that's big that happened in our life. We get there, maybe give it about a little while. Then we're like, okay, what's next?
Yep.
And then we're kind of like, okay, there's something big happened, promotion or whatever. Oh, well, okay, 5 minutes or 2 to 5 months, 6 months. All right, what's next?
Yep.
Like, it's kind of like, when do you find that? Okay, like I'm satisfied, or
yes.
do you think that's just like the nature of the person, or
this is
like, what are your opinions on that?
This question is so funny because this has quite literally been like a hot topic in my therapy sessions for over a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I genuinely do think a part of it is like a personality trait, right? Where you're just that person who grinds and always needs something to accomplish and something to look forward to and something to work towards, else you just feel like unfulfilled, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I have quietly been for the past 2 years working on finding that balance of I do have these goals, and whether they're 1 year goals or 5 year goals or 10 year goals, that I'm constantly working on. But also, let me acknowledge the fact that 5 years ago I made this goal, and right now I'm sitting in the fruits of that labor.
Yeah, you hit the goal.
All of that work, It's almost like you never get to enjoy your life because you're always on a wheel of
constantly. What's next?
And you don't realize how draining that is.
Exactly. Yeah, no, for sure. I'm like my graduation party. Like, you were there, so I was just in there. I was soaking it all in, and I just got home. I'm just like, all right, I graduated. What's next? Like, what's next? I'm like, I can't even enjoy the night of I got my diploma. You should be chilling. And I'm just like, nah, I gotta find what's next. It's like, I don't know why though.
I think honestly, for me, the biggest thing has been taking that focus off of accomplishments, or controlling life is more so what it was.
I can see that.
I read a book called The Surrender Experience.
Surrender Experience, y'all check that out.
Or Experiment, sorry, yeah. And I read it like a year or so ago, but it gave me a different perspective, because it talked about the way that we navigate life, and like when you try to control it too much, you don't enjoy it.
I can see that.
Sure. And so I'm like, that's it, right? Like, if there's one inconvenience, which again, fate is fate. You don't control anything. Like, life happens. You can't control people, actions, anything. Mm-hmm. Things are gonna fall. Cars are gonna fall the way they are. But when they don't, the way that you had it in your mind, you're like thinking of another way, or you're just like, oh, this, life isn't fair, and that type of thing. And I think that may have been the switch for me, where I'm like, okay, absolutely have a plan, right? Like, go at life with some grit and some, like, intention, but let life happen the way it does, and enjoy the moments, right? Like how they happen. There was another book that I read. I can't think of the name right now, but they talk about how life can definitely be linear, but it's not a line, right? There's like a million little dots that happen.
I can see that.
And like, while you're still inclined, like, you're still going at the things you do, it's not a linear experience, right? So I think in living in those moments, and again, letting life happen, but then navigating those experiences in the way that you see them fit is probably the difference there. Like, you get to enjoy that, right? You get to say, I just graduated. I just got a master's degree, right? Like, I think about the last 2 years or however long it took me to do this, and I think about how it would feel. And I think that's another thing too, right? Like, when you're in it, you think about what it's going to look like at the end. And then when you're there, you're like,
I was just like, all right.
Well, exactly,
this
right?
Is it, huh?
And that to me, that lets you know it's not a big thing. It's like something that, like, it sounds good when you say it, right? Like, it looks good on paper. It gets you the job. But it's just who you
talk to. It's depending on who you talk to. Because, like, if you talk to me, well, back in high school, I never even expected to go to college at all.
Really?
At all. And now to sit back and say, I got 2 masters, it's just, well, I'm just like, okay, I feel like that was something I was supposed to do. Like, like where I'm trying to go, like, I don't want no barriers. When that time comes, I got the box already checked. But now it's just kind of like, it's like, 2 years ago I was looking at the end, now I'm here, I'm like, okay, that wasn't as bad as I thought. But it's still, again, coming from somebody who had no intentions, no idea about going to school. It's still like, I still just feel like, well, what's next?
Yeah.
And I'm like, when do I give myself grace? Like, when do I pat myself on the back, kind of thing?
I think that's very funny, and I think the box to check thing is very very interesting point, because essentially that is what it is. Like, no matter how you, and I think because we're in this weird space where as Black people we're seen, like in a corporate setting specifically, we're seen as Black first, as, you know, whatever, however you come off. We feel like those degrees and that those experiences that we have will kind of define us. And then once you get it and you realize, I feel exactly
the same.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like you said, it's genuinely just a box I checked out. I feel accomplished, sure, but do I feel different? No. You know, I think that's the difference, like, in doing it because it's something that you enjoy or something that you feel like this is what's going to propel me further, or this is, you know, what I need to be on equal ground or whatever. And I think until you really do kind of come into, like, yourself and show up for yourself and really just like you said, give yourself that grace.
Yeah.
You aren't going to enjoy the now, right? You're always going to be looking for something to make you feel better or more fulfilled, or you know, whatever it is. And that's also where, like, I differ with a lot of people, because being like a 30-something-year-old woman, the conversations are very different when we talk about fulfillment.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of my counterparts professionally are older than me. Some of them have families, some of them don't.
Right.
But I'm always looked at very different, because I don't have that. I don't have the husband. I don't have the kids. And it's funny, I was just having this conversation last night with one of my friends. When you're in corporate settings, you almost always lead with, like, you know, people ask you, oh, you introduce yourself, or like, tell me something about you. It's always, you know, I've been married for 12 years. I have 4 kids, and I, you know, on the weekends we do it. And I don't think I've ever felt less of myself than in those settings where I'm like always scrambling for, like, what can I say to sound impressive? Like, you know, and it's really bad. And I finally got into a space where I can confidently say, like, I enjoy working. I like that I put my career first. You know, I have these degrees, and this is a huge part of myself, and I don't feel bad about it, right? Like, I get to do the things I actually enjoy on the weekends, and here are my hobbies, and while they may sound frivolous to you, these are the things that I genuinely enjoy.
It's all subjective who you talk to.
It is.
Yeah, it's all subjective.
But I felt for so long that I needed to kind of fit that mold.
Yeah, it's just that mold of this age you need to be this, or you know, whatever.
Yeah, and this is what fulfillment looks like. You know, your job is just a job. It just makes money. You know, in real life, you need to have these, you know, kids that make you feel be motherly, and I think that shift. And you want to know what caused that shift for me?
What's that?
Is having to hear Monday through Friday all of your coworkers come into work and complain about their wives and their husbands and their kids, and hear how genuinely miserable people were.
Yeah. You ask them what they did this weekend. You know, got on my damn nerves. And kids. You be like, well, hey, all right. I mean, but you quick to say, oh, I got 4 loving kids.
Exactly. And that's what really did it for me, because I'm like, okay, this portrait that they're painting for you isn't real. When your coworkers and stuff get comfortable with you, and you really start to hear the real, you're like, wow, majority of these people are miserable in their lives. Yeah. And when I actually sat and looked, I did realize, as a man, it's different, right? Like, men, for them to have families, that's something that propels their career.
Yeah.
You know, they're looked at a lot differently. And I think I read this in a study somewhere about, they talked about the CEOs from the top company, and how many of them were, like, over 6 feet, were married, had kids, and how it really is, like, they had, a lot of them had to be, like, not only physically appealing, but also that American dream thing.
That is true. Yeah, so they gotta look good too. Yeah.
And they want to, like, they look at you as a, like, you know, wholesome person if you're a father or you're a husband. You know, they think of your person exactly.
Yeah.
And And that I think also was this making where I'm realizing like this isn't, none of it's real. You
Yeah, it's a
know,
facade.
it all is. So genuinely do what makes you happy. Like, don't feel bad about that. Don't feel like, you know, you have to have this certain mold. And I'm not gonna say that that doesn't come with a price. Specifically as a woman, specifically as a black woman, it does. You know, it all comes with a price. You know, men have the luxury of, if you want to have a family today to propel your career, you can do that and it wouldn't hinder your career at all. Right?
Yeah.
Me,
well, from a woman's perspective,
you know, I'm pregnant for this many months, and let's just say I work for a company that doesn't even offer maternity leave. You know, all of those things have an effect on my career, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But my choices, the choices are the same, you know, and how we make them and the results.
You look at it like that, but it's very true. Like that's a nail on the head. That's just the beauty of the beast, really.
Honestly, like most of the women who I've known and witnessed in leadership positions and even mentors and stuff are unmarried. Some of them never been married. Some of them divorcees. Some of them got married later in life.
Right.
But there was a very common theme that I noticed among them, right? And for me, I was like, realistically, you have to make a choice.
Honestly, yeah, it comes to, like, I see that as a fork in the road. Which way you gonna go?
Yep.
Propel your career or roll the dice and kind of.
And that honestly, that also just kind of segues into the difficulty of dating and seriously dating specifically when you are kind of more career focused as a woman. It's not fun, you know.
I see that, yeah.
And you get to a point, like I said, like after 30, when you kind of are looking towards settling down or dating seriously, and you also just kind of have that luxury and like time-wise to do so, it gets harder, you know? But you do have in the back of your mind where you're like, okay, I did make a choice, you know? And am I now like facing the results of that? You know, like, is my career going to be enough? Like, is it where people say, like, is that money going to keep you warm at night type thing, where it's like, you know, we just like, oh, whatever. But it does become reality. And, like,
it's true. I
hate to be that person, but it's true. You know, it really is, again, specifically as a black woman. Like, it's harder. It really is. The further you go in your career, and again, I'm speaking as a black woman because this is important. It's a very important piece, right? As black women, let me say this: as a black woman who wants to date and marry a black man, the further up in your career you go, the harder it's going to be. Just statistically.
How so?
So
a Spark Notes version. I know we could go down.
Yeah, and I don't want to say the wrong thing here. Again, statistically, right? A black woman wants to date and marry a black man. If I'm going up further in my career, it means I'm earning more money, right?
Right.
So we're now specifically talking about high-earning black men, which we already know black women as a whole, no matter in what income bracket we're talking about, out-earn black men, right? For a variety of reasons, which we obviously won't get into. But you think about high-earning black women and one that's specifically career-focused, right? And that's also even let's throw in the 9-to-5, right? Because it's different. I want people to also understand that when we talk about high-earning black men and how little of them there are, a lot of them are entrepreneurs, right? Which we love an entrepreneur. But one thing I don't think people understand is the vast difference in lifestyles between entrepreneurs and 9-to-5 workers, right?
Yeah, very true.
I've tried it so many times, and it's just not real. It's not realistic. Like, you know, we won't get into that. So, but yeah, so let's talk about that, right? Like, and then again, 30 plus. Yeah. Most of those men are already married by then, right? So now we're again dwindling down, and so now we get to the real issue, right? Where we are at that small percentage of the high-earning black men who aren't married, 30 plus. Let's just say corporate, you know, working. I think a lot of them, you know, as men, one thing I'll say is that men are typically, black men and we're also in the South, so let's throw that in there.
Yeah.
They're raised and molded to be providers, right?
True.
Which we love. We love a providing black man. But I think they're kind of thrown for a loop sometimes when you're not looking to be provided for. So once they've reached a certain status, I want ease, right? Like I go to work, I know that I can support a family. Now what I'm looking for in my partner is more so a domestic, right?
The nurturing portion.
Right. And I don't fit that mold, right? So I think, which is totally understanding, right? Like I can definitely understand that, and I think they aren't, when they see you, because they're so used to that, they're like, oh, you have a career because that's kind of what you needed to do, but it doesn't matter anymore, right? So when you say no, like I enjoy working, I don't want to be a stay-at-home wife. This is important to me.
Yeah.
Men aren't used to approaching women that way.
Up what you
they are used to women just having to take that back end and say, okay, now it's time to start a family. So obviously you're going to be the one to, be at the forefront of that. And that's hard,
I can see that.
Like when you talk about a family unit, we've seen successful two working parent houses, but it's very rare that happens in the black community, honestly. So that's been my experience. It just almost feels like there's so many things against me, and I've just been at a point where I'm like, you might at some point have to choose.
Yeah.
Interesting. Which is, as a woman, it kind of sucks.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, shout out to the women that genuinely strive for and want to be stay-at-home wives and mothers. Like, I wish I had,
it's just a personality.
It really is,
A whole lot of things, a whole lot of stuff, yeah.
But, and so, like, meeting someone who supports you, not just, as a woman, but also a woman with a career, and respects that, and kind of finds a way to navigate around that.
I mean, I don't know, because it's weird, because, this is like a whole conversation, but I know that you do have people that, it's like that 50-50 conversation. What does the woman bring to the table? What is that? What is this? What is that? So it's just like a whole...
That's an interesting thing. So when you bring up the 50-50 thing, right? So let's talk about that, right? So let's say, and then that's a whole different... I think I have a different perspective on that, because I do think it becomes less of a conversation the more money you earn, right?
Of course,
right?
No, that's the nature of the beast.
It's like if I make six figures, I don't assume that someone else making six figures could maintain their lives and my life, right? That's just not realistic, right? So is it really 50? Which, again, understood it. But I think because men who are in those positions just automatically assume women, because let's be clear, a lot of women don't make that much money, right? For obvious reasons. They assume that they're going to be the breadwinner in the, that they're going to fulfill these very specific, roles in the house, and that the woman is going to do different. And a lot of men don't know how to, caveat from that.
Right.
So, and if you are going, and I think that's so funny. I've heard people saying, I can go 50-50 with a man and he still wear the pants type thing, where it's like...
Yeah, it's all just what works for the relationship, or works for whatever they're trying to envision in their relationship to be, or stuff like that. Just everybody wants to put a mold on. This is how it has to be. Yeah. If it don't do this, then it's not gonna work, and it's not. That's just not.
And it's really some social media stuff. To be honest, I'm like, when I hear people say certain things, like, you need to log off of Twitter and get in the field, because in real life these conversations just aren't happening. It's like it's not like you meet someone, and I think you can pretty much gauge how people move, and what their expectations are, and where they are money wise, and obviously you're not gonna know, but men aren't walking up to you asking
that's it's just not realistic.
It's really not. But I will say again, because I've been in the field for a long time, too long. Social media has had a huge impact on dating.
Yeah.
And so people are kind of bringing those those viewpoints into like real life situations, and you're like,
because I mean, social media is now the new life. Like it's just,
which is so crazy to me.
Yeah, that's a whole nother that's like a whole nother loophole. But I do want to, because I know you did touch on this a lot, and I want to make sure that we cover this on today's conversation. I know you said, being young in the corporate space, being a woman in the corporate space, specifically being a black woman in the corporate space. When you say that, what does that kind of life look? What is that, like that experience like? What is that, when you say that, what is that in your, because it's not going to be a blanket for everybody, but for you specifically, do you feel any different coming from in that corporate space? You move companies, is that different between those two? Like, just kind of touch a little bit on that.
Absolutely. And I do think it is sort of a universal experience with black women. Just having that conversation with multiple women, black women in that space, various ages, different companies, even different, fields. It is a sort of a universal experience that you have in the corporate space, to where, as a black man, you can, I'm sure, relate to some of this. It's very reminiscent of your experience in the real world, where you're never seen as yourself. First, you're seen as either black or a woman. Who knows? Depending on the person who's going to see it first, right? But you're always going to have those two things layered on you, right? Where people are going to have preconceived notions of you just based off of that. Corporate America historically has always just been a white men field, right? Like, that's been their domination. Yeah. That's where they go to reign. And when you think about any experience you've had, or any negative experience you've had with a white man in passing or just in life, think about that 10 times in a corporate space. And that's what you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. It's almost as if when you go to work, you are always having to prove yourself, right? And I think being young has only made that worse.
Yeah.
And this is the one I did not ever anticipate. Obviously, being a woman, got it. I've experienced that my entire life, being sexualized, and that does not stop in the workplace, right? As a black person, the racist remarks. And I will say, just personally, I think being a woman, I've experienced worse things than being black.
I can see that.
And I think for me, it's because I've been privileged to work in a little more diverse space. Mm-hmm. But I can't imagine if I was in a different industry and that wasn't as diversified,
Yeah.
But the young thing is what I did not ever prepare myself for. I always felt as if, accomplishing a lot early was like my biggest brag, right?
I'm
I'm in these spaces that, you've been in this job for 12 years, and I always came up with just like a wide idea, like, oh, tell me what you know, or teach me what you know. And so very quickly did I learn that the only reason these people were in these spaces was because they had been there for so long. They didn't know more than you. They didn't,
filling the space basically.
And they envy you for that.
Mm-hmm.
And well, we can really just say boomers, right? Like, they have a very different outlook on life than we do.
Yeah, for sure.
We are all very much grind. They're, like you said, I'm working for 40 years. I just want to retire. Yeah. We have a different passion about us.
I know how to do this. I'm going to stay doing this.
This is all I need to know.
I don't like this change.
Yeah. And there's just a certain amount of disrespect that they have for you. And it's all just out of envy, right? Mm-hmm. So being in a space where me as a young black woman is having to, just kind of consult and train older white men, it's probably the most difficult thing that I've had to do in my life. The passive aggressiveness of it all, and sometimes not even so. So like at my previous company, like I said, I had a lot of the leadership I had were women or black men, or just it never really made me feel small, right? Like, I've had very racist or sexist interactions but they weren't. I never felt like it really had a bearing on my actual growth.
Yeah.
And so like now I'm at a new company and it's night and day.
Okay. Good or bad? Or indifferent? Or just
both,
okay.
Actually. So, inexperience wise, going from a huge company to a smaller scale company, there's just things that you are knowledgeable and have experience that a lot of those people haven't and won't. So you already come in sort of like with a chip on your shoulder, and that's noticed immediately, right? Things I didn't anticipate. For me, I'm thinking, as a young person, I've experienced so much at this huge company, and if I go to the smaller company, it's, innovative, like my ear, I'll be heard, like I have a voice.
Yeah, you have a voice, yeah.
Things that you would love, and then you quickly realize that, oh, that's,
a gimmick.
It's not all it's chalked up to be, because,
okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
as a black woman, a young black woman, like, yeah, sure, you have a voice now, but nobody wants to hear what you're saying. Like that.
Yeah, it's kind of like that one year I do it. Okay.
Yeah, nobody, like, we hear what you're saying and it makes all the sense, but because it's coming from you,
we're not
thank
gonna
you.
run with it.
No, thank you. We're just gonna continue doing this the very inefficient, very costly, very timely way.
So you're seeing ways to make them lean, but they're like, nah, like. You don't really. We hear you. You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you don't. And regardless of, again, me having not only more education and experience,
you're qualified. You have the credentials to back up what you're saying.
It's me. It's all about. It's not the delivery. It's me.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because in my interviews, I was stoked. I was like, oh, this is gonna be so different. They see me like so inviting, and then I think that cold like realization of thinking, was I a diversity hire? Like this
just kind of a box. Like, you're just a number.
You don't care about what I think or what I know or my experience or my education or what I have to say. I am here for you to check a box. And say, yeah, we hire women. Yeah, we hire black people. Like, yes.
That is crazy.
Do we care what they say or their viewpoint?
But I think that could be like that's double-sided. I mean, just because, like, from an HR perspective, we don't know. From a manager's perspective, you don't know. But just like you said in your previous role, you had those people above you that listened to you, you felt. And then I just feel like, at this point, you just don't have, do you think it's just because you don't have those people that's there that will accept what you're saying?
To be honest with you, though, what I think is that I should have been that person. I think, and this is a whole different point of one thing that going to a smaller company made me realize is that I sold myself short in a lot of things. And I think because I was at such a huge company, it was kind of like having imposter syndrome. Like, I was in so many rooms with so many intelligent people that just knew so much, and it was always so, like, I was just constantly soaking in knowledge to where I'm thinking, I'll go to a new place and have a voice, but I didn't realize how much more I knew and experienced than those counterparts. So when I went to a smaller scale company, I'm thinking, like, this is the role I have here. Let me find something similar. When really the role I did here, I was probably like three roles
tiers
ahead.
Exactly. Of that.
So
based on your spread.
Yes. So imagine being in a position where not only do you know that you know more than your manager or your director, your manager and director also know that, right? That's hard to navigate.
Yeah, that is crazy.
It is, and I like they're not really able to lead me in the way that my other ones were
because you essentially know more and experience more than they have.
And imagine how threatening that feels as
then they might gonna be like, we hear you, but it's like we might just
not too much.
All right, I'll hold that off.
And I can't blame it on anyone but myself because, and I think it's again being a black woman, being young. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but they say that men, when they apply for jobs, they tend to apply for jobs that they don't meet all the qualifications for.
Yeah.
But women, when they do it, they only apply to jobs where they meet almost 100% of the qualifications.
I'd be interested to look at that.
That's the thing, and I will never forget. I'm like, I didn't realize, and it's almost like, men are obviously, raised with that confidence and almost audacity, right? Which is the only thing, one of the most things that you need in corporate America, because that's how people move, right? Like, no one's gonna look out for you in that way. Like, have to always be an advocate for yourself. And so if you're applying to this job which I was honestly overqualified for, I'm thinking like, wow, I probably should have gone, like you said, 2-3 tiers up here. Like, so yeah, everything is a lesson learned.
Yeah, I was gonna say it happens for a reason. Now
it does. It really does. But the experience is just, it can be draining, to say the least.
Yeah.
To say the least. And again, this is no different than what you experience on a day-to-day, just existing as a Black woman. But in a corporate space, and just to reiterate what you said, where you spend the majority of your time, the majority of your week, and again, someone who actually is passionate about what they do, it can kind of ruin it for you, and I think that's why it's important to have those spaces in the work environment, those ERGs. I would definitely tell everybody, like, if you have that option at work, find like-minded people, share those experiences, network with people like you. I will never be a person who feels bad about being in a room and finding the women, or finding the Black people, or finding, like, that is so community is so important. Like, you don't want to lose yourself. And I think as a Black woman in corporate space, that's been my biggest challenge, is showing up as myself, but also being very aware of how I'm being perceived.
Right.
Because that's just something that white people don't have to do, right? They're the standard in that space. So when I show up, I don't want to feel like I'm conforming too much, but I also want to be very aware of how I'm perceived and what I'm saying and what I'm doing, and still feel like I'm my authentic self. It's a constant battle. And
I can understand that for sure.
This is one thing I talk to my mentee about a lot, because the younger generation, this is why I talk about mentoring too, like, they have a very different outlook on life than we, the same way we look at life different than boomers. They are very different than us, right? They want to show up just anyway, like, they don't really conform in any way, which, I love the authenticity, but everything is a balance, so I think learning that and passing that down is very important.
Very important.
And having those outlets, like, enjoy the things you want to enjoy on the weekend, or, like, outside of work, or have that boundary with your coworkers, right? To where, like, if you say those certain things or do those certain things, that they're going to take that and run with that. Like, just be aware of that. I think, and it's a constant thing that you have to, like, learn, but it's probably the most important thing about being able, and speaking up too, right? Like, when I say boundaries, I don't mean like invisible boundaries. I mean actually verbalizing and setting those boundaries, right? I can't tell you how many times I've had to quite literally enter rooms or just be this very stoic person, which is not me, but me in a corporate setting is very different, right?
Yeah.
I remember actually last week, had a conversation with my coworkers. My new job, it's a very lax environment, right? Which is very different than anything I'm used to. And I haven't really quite adjusted to that.
Right.
So, and just in general, I'm a person who, like, dresses up. I was just raised like that, right? Like, I'm in heels.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
So many days, right?
The same way.
And so a lot of my coworkers, I work with a lot of white men, right? They'll be in jeans and like a collared shirt or whatever it is. And one of them said, you still have that presence from, my old job. And I literally had, I don't know if it was the time he caught me or what, but I had to tell him, like, if I showed up to work as you did, it would be a very different experience.
Yeah.
And
I know what you
different.
mean. I know what you mean.
So different. Like, and it's funnier too because of just how I look. Honestly, if I was a slim build woman, right, that would also look different in jeans and like a casual shirt, and like those are things that you have to be aware about. I don't want to be sexualized in the workplace, right? Like, while it's probably inevitable because men are, no offense, but you know, it's
none taken.
It's like there are things that it's kind of like talking to a white person about racism. It's just exhausting. I don't want to have to explain this to you, but you know, it's like I told him it would just be very different. You get to be mediocre, unfortunately. You get to show up like this and not have anybody look at you twice or think, oh, is she like someone's administrative assistant or something? You know, like that type of thing where you're constantly thinking about or having to think about how you're being perceived. Because unfortunately, people are going to see you before they hear you, you know?
Very true, very true.
And that's just, while it is exhausting, it's life, right? Like, I can't shake that, you know?
Yeah.
People are going to perceive you the way they are. They're going to have those preconceived notions of women, of black people, of younger people.
Nothing you can do about
there
that.
There isn't. And, like, that's why, like, showing up as you, and, like, I like to say, you know, like, I want my work to speak for me. Wow, that would just be, in a perfect world, that would be it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not real life, you know? So, yeah, but I think my only, where I would leave it at is to not let it consume you. Like, don't get lost in that, you know? Don't get lost in it.
Yeah.
Show up as yourself. That's the only way we're going to kind of shape shift that environment. Is, like, still being our true selves and showing that as my true self, you know, I am in the same position as you, or I'm, you know, in a position ahead of you, and I deserve to be here. Like, I belong here.
Yeah, seat at the table.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you know how we do at the end of all these conversations. For those that don't know, progression over perfection. We make sure that, you know, everyone has their idea of perfection. Everybody has their, you know, mindset of where they have their perfect life, what they want to be, and some people just strive for that perfection, but sometimes and ultimately it might never happen, but that's okay. As long as we know the progressionary steps, and then we just try to strive for some type of progression, and that could be different in any aspect as well. But, you know, Melissa definitely dropped us with some dimes, and we appreciate her, but we can't leave just yet until we get, what does the word perfection, what does the word progression mean for you, and just kind of what kind of thoughts comes to your mind when you do that, when you hear that word?
I think about progression. I genuinely just thinking about, you know, moving forward. You know, whatever that looks like in that time. It's not, like I was saying earlier, it's not always going to be linear. You know, it could be like a lot of dots. As long as you're moving forward in some aspect, that's progression. And it could mean different things at different times of your life.
Very
you
true.
know, it could be small things, it could be big things, but I think it's not like every day you're living, you're progressing.
That's true.
So
You living, you are progressing 1% better each day. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So again, we appreciate you being the first woman on the podcast, on our conversation. She definitely dropped a lot. If y'all don't have a mentor, make sure you get a mentor. Make sure that you just show up for yourself, be yourself. Don't let nobody tell you otherwise.
Absolutely.
So that's it for this episode. We'll talk to y'all. See y'all on the next one.
Bye.